Welcome to our channel, where every story touches a hidden truth and honors the courage of ordinary people who dare to stand up. If you've ever felt that something isn't quite right with the way the world works, then today's story will give you something to think about. If you enjoy what we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you don't, hey, that's fine too. Just comment 1 below so we know you're still watching. And please, leave your honest thoughts, because sometimes a single comment can spark a much bigger conversation. I used to think that losing a job or going through a breakup was the worst pain imaginable, but nothing in life prepared me for this. Waking up in the middle of the night to find the crib empty. Nora, my only daughter, was gone. No noise, no signs of forced entry, just an absolute void, as if no child had ever existed in that room. Everything was still in place. The blanket neatly folded, the stuffed animals arranged like someone had gently repositioned them, and the baby monitor screen. Black. In that moment, my world, already unstable after a painful divorce, completely collapsed. We had only moved into this neighborhood 6 weeks ago. A fresh start, I had told myself, as I signed the lease on the little house at the end of the street. Neat, quiet, gated, and most importantly, safe, or so the realtor promised. What I didn't know was that the word safe came with 3 ominous letters, HOA, the Homeowners Association. It sounded like a bunch of retirees trimming lawns and checking trash bins. I didn't care until Karen appeared, khaki baseball cap, coral pink polo, clipboard held like an arrest warrant. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, smiling, but the kind that never reaches the eyes. Then her gaze shifted to Nora, sleeping peacefully in her stroller, and she said something I will never forget. "We're particularly strict about the future of this community." At first, I thought she was just uptight, but then the letters started arriving. A note taped to the door in bold red letters, HOA balance. Due, $18,612. No explanation, no itemized bill. 3 days later, the amount nearly doubled, along with a warning, violation, stroller obstructing walkway. I laughed when I read it, until the 3rd letter arrived, accompanied by a photo. Nora, sleeping in her stroller. Underneath, the caption, "Repeat offenses will result in enforcement action." I remember how my hands shook, from fear, from rage. I went to Karen's house and pounded on the door. She opened it like she'd been expecting me. "Rules are rules," she said, her tone flat like a tired cashier. I turned to leave, and then she added something, not scary because of what she said, but because she couldn't possibly have known. "You forgot to latch your baby gate last night." I had never told anyone that. I hadn't even realized it myself until the next morning. That night, I locked every door, checked every outlet, secured every latch. But the next morning, Nora's toys were rearranged. Not randomly scattered, but carefully stacked into a small pyramid. The following night, the motorized swing began to sway, even though it wasn't plugged in. I stepped out onto the porch to catch my breath, and there was Karen. No phone, no dog, no purpose. Just standing, smiling, waving. From that day on, I kept a baseball bat under Nora's crib, but it wasn't enough. On a morning darker than any forecast could predict, I opened my eyes to a silence so deep it screamed. No crying, no stirring, not even my own voice. Because my throat had locked up the moment I saw it, the empty crib. And I knew. They had taken her. The baby monitor was one of the first things I bought when we moved into the new house. Not because I was afraid of someone breaking in, but because I was a single mother. I needed an extra pair of eyes, even if they were electronic, to protect the one little person who still gave my life meaning. But I never imagined that this tiny device would become the first warning sign of the nightmare lurking in the dark. It started quietly. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, the baby monitor turned on by itself. No sound, no image, just a soft blue static, a pale, whispering haze, and a long, drawn-out buzzing like it was channeling something from another world. I reached to turn it off, and then a voice came through, low, calm, almost lazy, but clear as day. "That little girl doesn't belong to you." I froze. My heart missed a beat, maybe more. That wasn't a system notification. That wasn't a toy malfunction. That was a real human voice. And someone was speaking through the monitor placed in my daughter's room. I tried to calm myself. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I was just overtired. But when I turned the monitor off and back on, nothing changed. Still the static, still the eerie glow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor, gripping a baseball bat, staring at a screen that showed no signal, and feeling the fear inside me grow, heavy and cold, like a stone in my chest. The next morning, I told no one. Who would believe me? A new mom, living alone, getting harassed by a bizarre HOA, claiming her baby monitor spoke to her. But I knew I wasn't crazy, because things got worse. The next day, I found Nora's wooden toy blocks, normally tossed all over the floor, stacked into a perfect pyramid, symmetrical, balanced, not the work of a toddler. There had been no noise during the night, no signs of entry, just this unnatural precision. The following evening, I heard the swing, the motorized baby swing, the kind that only moves when plugged in. But it wasn't plugged in. I knew that for sure, because I had unplugged it before going to bed. And yet, there it was, gently rocking, as if someone was soothing a child. That wasn't mine. My gut told me to leave, to pack up and get out. But every time I tried to act on it, something held me back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the faint hope that things would return to normal. But it all shattered the moment I stepped outside for air and saw Karen, not by accident, not on a casual walk. She was just standing there, right in the middle of the sidewalk. No phone, no dog, no excuses. Just standing, staring directly at me, with a smile that didn't comfort, it threatened, and a wave that said without words, "We know. We see everything." That's when I started keeping a baseball bat under Nora's crib. Not because I thought I'd have to swing it, but because, for the first time in my life, I truly believed I might. And I was right, because the baby monitor wasn't done speaking. It turned on again. After midnight, same black screen, same low hum. But the voice was clearer now, slower, like it was smiling. "That little girl doesn't belong to you." I thought the whispers in the night were the final boundary, but they were only the overture, because something far more terrifying than vague sounds is when the threat steps out of the shadows, clear, tangible, and chillingly precise. 3 days after the baby monitor last spoke, a letter was silently slipped under Nora's bedroom door. No envelope, no return address. Just a single sheet of white paper, printed in all caps. No handwriting, and yet it felt like someone had whispered it straight into my ear. Community intervention pending, maternal non-compliance status. This wasn't a warning. It was a verdict, a declaration that I was no longer deemed fit to keep my own child. I lunged for the doorbell camera system, scrubbed through the previous night's footage. Nothing unusual at first, just squirrels, a delivery guy. But at exactly 2:46 a.m., I saw her. A young woman, not Karen, wearing a jacket labeled HOA Security Liaison, and in her hands, a small cream-colored blanket, Nora's blanket, the one I only used during her naming ceremony, with her name hand-stitched in the corner. The woman looked directly into the lens and smiled, not the polite smile of a stranger, but the uncanny smile of someone who knows you too well. Then she mouthed a single word, slow and clear. "Midnight." And just like that, she vanished into the darkness, as if she had never been there. I replayed the clip 5 times. That blanket was one of a kind, and she held it like it was hers. Memories slammed into me like a hammer. Last week, a man had knocked on the door, wearing a vest that read, HOA Maintenance. Said he was checking smoke detectors in the neighborhood. Like a sleep-deprived fool, I let him in. He walked through every room, except the kitchen. Now I realize, that was the only room without windows. He wasn't inspecting systems. He was surveying my house. I called the police. They showed up with the energy of men handling a petty noise complaint. No fingerprinting, no real questions. The phrase repeated again and again. There's no sign of forced entry. I showed them my phone screen, the footage. 2 men in gray polo shirts, expressionless, one carrying a car seat, the other cradling a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. They didn't sneak. They didn't run. They walked, like men finishing a routine shift. I pointed at one of them. A scar on his jawline, distinct and unmistakable, but the officer just repeated, "We can't confirm the child's identity without facial recognition." I slammed my hand on the table. "Don't do that. Don't talk like that. She's my daughter." But to them, this was just another report, another case with no urgency. That was when something inside me snapped, not with fear, but with fire. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't panic. This was truth, as sharp as daylight. They didn't take her for money. They took her because they could. And I, a single mother, pushed to the margins by invisible rules and a system that doesn't care, had become the easiest target. But what they never expected was that I wouldn't fall. I wouldn't wait. I would act. Because I knew. If I didn't move now, there would be nothing left to save tomorrow. I will never forget that morning. That cold light filtering through the curtains, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but a warning. There are sounds you long to hear, a child's laughter, a rustle from the crib, a soft cry in the dark that means your baby needs you. But that morning, there was nothing. No sound from Nora, no familiar hum from the baby monitor, just a dead silence so thick it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I shot up, heart pounding like war drums. The baby monitor was black. I ran to the nursery, slamming into the doorframe so hard I bruised my shoulder. But that pain was nothing compared to the nightmare waiting for me. The crib was empty, the pillow still flat, the stuffed animals still lined up, the blanket folded neatly, as if no child had ever slept there. I screamed her name, once, twice, 3 times. My voice cracked into ash. No reply, no whimper from behind the curtains. Just my heartbeat, smashing against my ribs like it was trying to break free. I tore through every room, flipping pillows, crawling under beds, opening the fridge in desperate disbelief. No Nora. The back door was open. I never leave the back door open, especially not at night. But this morning, it stood ajar, just wide enough to mock me, as if whispering, "I came in. I took what mattered most, and you didn't even notice." I grabbed my phone, but it was dead, battery gone. I stumbled to the landline, shaking, breathing in ragged gasps, and dialed 911. My voice barely worked, fractured by fear. "My daughter's been taken. Someone came into my house and took her." The dispatcher's first question hit me like a slap. "Is there a custody dispute, ma'am?" I screamed, rage and desperation colliding. "No, there's no father. It's just me. I live alone. Someone opened the back door and took my baby." But every answer from them was cold as marble. They asked for her birth date, her height, her weight, then said they were evaluating whether the situation qualifies for an Amber Alert. I nearly shouted into the phone, "She's 1 year old. She can't open doors. She can't walk 10 steps without falling down." "Please stay calm. A patrol unit is on the way," they said, and hung up. I expected flashing lights, sirens, a full-force search. But what I got was a single squad car, no lights, no urgency. A middle-aged officer stepped out, holding a notepad, his eyes heavy like he'd just woken from a nap. I ran to him, voice cracked with grief. "She's gone. Someone took her." He didn't flinch, just nodded like he was reading from a script. "Let's walk through the timeline." I told him everything. The baby monitor, switching on by itself, the whispered voice, the strange signs, the missing blanket, the woman in the HOA jacket at midnight. I showed him the ring cam footage. 2 strange men, one carrying a baby seat, the other carrying my daughter's blanket. He wrote it all down with a blank face, and then repeated the same phrase. "There's no sign of forced entry." I stared at him, red-eyed and shaking. "If that were your child, would you say that?" Only when I screamed, only when I jabbed my finger at the screen, did he pause. But then, he looked down and said, "We'll follow up with the HOA." That was it. No search grid, no list of suspects, no urgency, no belief. And that was the moment I knew. Nora wasn't the only one taken. Justice had disappeared with her. When the officer closed his notebook and left with a hollow promise to follow up with the HOA, I knew I had reached the absolute bottom of my faith in the system. No one was coming. No one truly cared. And if I wanted Nora back, I would have to go into the lion's den myself, starting with the one place every neighbor avoided, the HOA model home. It sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, a house straight out of a magazine. Perfect. Too perfect. Curtains always drawn. Lights turned on at exactly 8 p.m. every night. But no one had ever seen anyone come or go. Whenever a black SUV parked in front and left quietly, neighbors would glance through their blinds, then turn away, as if fear had long since become routine. I had once seen Karen, in her usual khaki cap and coral polo, use a key fob to enter that house. No hesitation, no caution. She walked in like she owned it, and I took it. During a community appreciation brunch hosted by the HOA, while Karen scolded a family for hanging the wrong shade of flag, I quietly slipped my hand into her purse. The fob was there, cold as steel and heavy with secrets. I left the party, circled behind the bushes, put on gloves, hid a GoPro under my jacket, my heart thundering in my chest. The model home's back door had a digital lock. I held the fob to the sensor. A soft, green light. Click. The sound was crisp, too deliberate. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was suffocating in its perfection. A thick chemical smell. Bleach, maybe, but layered with something faint and foul, like rust or rotting meat. There wasn't a speck of dust on any surface, but the whole place reeked of artificiality. This wasn't a home. It was a set. Fake fruit glistening under staged lighting. The TV, just a cardboard cutout. The dining table, already arranged, like waiting for an inspection. And then I saw them. Files. Thick stacks of dossiers arranged on the table, each one labeled by address. My hands shook as I opened the one with my address. Inside, photo after photo. Me collecting mail. Nora in her stroller, my garbage can time-stamped, even interior shots of my garage. Then, bank statements, old job applications, eviction notices, and under it all, a line in red ink. Subject, single parent, easily manipulated, community risk, high. I opened a second folder, children, faces blurred, names blacked out, and a handwritten note in red. Phase 2, high-risk group, prep for relocation. This wasn't a model home, this was a command center. One of the documents included a floor plan of my house, internal camera placements clearly marked, and beneath it scribbled, installation complete. I staggered backward, heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. Above me, the floor creaked, just once. Quiet enough to doubt, loud enough to know. I wasn't alone. I crept down the hallway, following a faint mechanical sound, a rhythm, soft, like breathing, behind a wall. Then I saw it, a steel door. No handle, just a fingerprint scanner and a metal panel engraved with Residential Stability Program, Level 2 access only. I knew that if I turned back now, there would be no second chance. My grip tightened on the fob. My ears strained for every shift in air, every whisper of movement. Because beneath the flawless coat of paint, beneath the sterilized floors and fake fruit, this model home was more than a storage unit. It was the heartbeat of something massive. And I had just walked into its center. I never thought I'd be capable of killing someone. But in that moment, standing face to face with Karen, Nora clutched tightly in one arm, a blood-specked crowbar in the other. I knew. If she took one more step, I wouldn't hesitate. The steel door behind me hissed open, not because of me, but from a fingerprint scan. Karen stepped in, like she knew exactly I'd be there, at this exact moment. No surprise, no panic. Just that dead flat stare, like glass over still water, and a voice as cold as a scalpel. I warned you not to escalate. I backed away, Nora trembling against my chest, her heartbeat thudding like an alarm clock in overdrive. "What is this?" I growled. "A child detention center? A human trafficking front posing as an HOA?" Karen shook her head, not with denial, but pity. "This is a correction hub, a necessary solution for a society spinning out of control." "You kidnapped my daughter," I shouted. "We call it reallocation," she said flatly, "and she's not the first." That was when two men appeared from the hallway behind her, gray polos, emotionless faces, each holding a taser like it was routine. Karen raised a hand to stop them, directing the scene like a stage she'd performed 100 times before. She opened her clipboard, the most dangerous weapon in this entire nightmare, and read, Case 315 Ridgeview. Status: single mother, financially unstable, low community engagement, non-compliant behavior, threshold exceeded. Recommendation: minor reassignment. My hands shook, but I kept my voice steady. You think this is protecting children? This is control, a sick system built by people addicted to power. Karen tilted her head, a faint smile creeping in. No one wants to make hard decisions, but when a child grows up in chaos, who takes responsibility? I do, I said without pause. I'm her mother, not you, not your disease system. One of the men stepped forward, taser raised. I didn't wait. I pivoted, Nora tight against me, and swung the crowbar with every ounce of hatred and instinct I had. The sound, metal against bone, was unforgettable. He dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The second one lunged, but I had learned low sweep, pivot, strike the knee. He crumpled, clutching at my hoodie. I slipped out of it, Nora still safe in my arms, and I ran. Karen's voice rang behind me. Non-compliant subject. Escalated protocol activate. I didn't know what escalated protocol meant, but I knew I couldn't stay. I ran like I'd never run before. Through sterile concrete corridors, up narrow metal stairs, past the fake kitchen, plastic fruit, and flickering fluorescent lights. And then, the front door. A portal through madness. I slammed it open, burst into the night. No alarms, no red lights, no police. Just me, Nora. And one terrifying truth. They didn't just want my daughter. They wanted the next generation. And I, a mother with nothing left to lose, had just become the system's worst nightmare. I thought I was alone. All throughout the fight to get Nora back, I believed no one in this neighborhood cared. No one saw. No one dared to stand with me. But I was wrong. And Karen made the gravest mistake of all. She underestimated the most dangerous force imaginable. A desperate mother might strike back, but a woken community is unbreakable. That night, as I ran barefoot with Nora in my arms, the cold, jagged gravel slicing at my feet, my heart pounded with every step, counting backward. I knew they wouldn't let this go. I had broken their rules, entered where no one was supposed to enter, seen what no one was supposed to see, and I didn't have to wait long. At 4:12 a.m., headlights swept across our bedroom, then shattered into a cascade of glass. 3 figures stepped through the broken window. Gray polos, blank faces, one holding a tablet, one gripping a crowbar, one wearing gloves, like he was preparing for an autopsy, not a break-in. I didn't scream, and Nora didn't cry. She looked at me, wide-eyed, and clutched my shirt tighter, somehow sensing this moment was beyond anything a child should ever comprehend. I dove into the closet, slammed my palm on a hidden panic button. A silent federal alarm, my sister, a U.S. Marshal, had secretly installed. 10 seconds. I just had to survive 10 seconds. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. I burst out of the closet, crowbar in hand, ready to face them head on. And then, it happened. The porch light outside blazed on, then the house next door, then the next. Window after window lit up like flares. Flashlights, car headlights, porch lamps. The whole street lit up like a stadium. A neighbor whistled. A dad in a bathrobe yelled out, "Game's on!" Doors swung open. People poured out. Baseball bats, flashlights, even frying pans and skateboards in hand. Teenagers lifted their phones. Moms stood on their porches, unflinching, and a golden retriever lunged, sinking its teeth into one intruder's pant leg. I stepped onto the porch, hair wild, clothes torn, Nora in my arms, crowbar raised high. "Get out of my house!" 2 of the men bolted. The third was tackled by a teenager and held down with a throw pillow. And in the stunned silence that followed, a black SUV with no plates crept to the end of the road. But this time, it wasn't there to intimidate. It was there to witness the fury of a neighborhood that had finally woken up. My sister arrived just minutes later. Federal vehicle, 2 agents in tow, no sirens, no chaos. just the quiet, certain presence of real justice. She didn't say much, just knelt down and asked, "Name?" The man muttered it, trembling. And that was the beginning of the end. The moment the shadow network disguised as an HOA finally began to unravel. I used to think that getting Nora back was the end of the story, but in truth, it was only the beginning, because what I saw beneath the model home, the files, the audio recordings, the hidden cameras, the relocation protocols, wasn't just a personal nightmare. It was a system, carefully designed, expertly disguised, wrapped in laws, HOA rules, and community codes. And now that I'd survived it, I knew I had a larger purpose, to expose it all. We didn't file a complaint. We didn't submit a formal grievance. My sister, a federal agent, called the Department of Justice directly. Within 48 hours, 3 agencies were activated: DOJ, Civil Rights Division, FBI, Cybercrimes, DHS, Infrastructure Investigations. And they didn't hesitate, because what we had wasn't just a story, it was evidence. I gave them everything: anonymous letters, the recording of Karen saying silent reassignments, no council votes, surveillance logs on other families, photos proving my daughter had been tracked before she went missing, blueprints of my house with hidden camera placements marked in red. We traced voices, followed the money, uncovered the real engine behind the HOA. Not a property management company as advertised, but a shell network, tied to a policy lobbying group in DC, a private adoption pipeline in Arizona, and a phantom construction firm in Florida. We didn't keep this in the dark. I created an encrypted file, compressed the entire data set, and dropped a QR code flyer into 200 mailboxes across the neighborhood. Within hours, the files exploded online, first on Reddit, then Twitter. Before sundown, local news came knocking. By midnight, CNN and Fox were broadcasting it nationwide. One single mother, one horrifying HOA. The nation watched. The HOA fought back, claimed their systems were hacked, that the footage was deep-faked. But that lie collapsed in less than 24 hours. One board member was doxxed and resigned. A lawyer on the executive committee was fired on Zoom. The property management partner held a press conference to terminate their contract immediately. Then came the statewide message from the governor's office. Parental rights are non-negotiable. What happened in this residential community will be fully investigated. In under 72 hours, a fog of deception years in the making was torn apart by the light of truth. And the people who once walked with their heads down, silent, afraid, uncertain, now understood. They were never alone. I thought it was over. The HOA dismantled. The model home sealed shut. The agents gone. And Nora, finally asleep in my arms after too many nights, filled with nightmares. But on that quiet Saturday morning, as I stepped onto the porch to get the paper, a white envelope waited silently in the mailbox. No return address, no stamp, no logo, just white paper, black ink. I opened it. My hands didn't tremble, but my heart clenched as if something had reached in and gripped it tight. In italic font, centered on the page, were the words, "You have disrupted the protocol. The council is watching. Silence remains your option. No threats, no orders." But the message was unmistakable. I was no longer the hunted single mother. I had become the enemy of the system. I didn't tell Nora. She sat quietly on the rug, still too young to understand, but still carrying something. A shadow behind her eyes from what she had seen and what she had escaped. But I knew, if I gave in to fear, if I chose silence now, I would be leaving a door open for the same darkness to find its way back. I handed the letter to my sister. She didn't flinch. She simply nodded and said, "Paper burns." And we did. We burned it in the kitchen sink, watched the smoke spiral up, ash from a system not yet dead but burning. 2 weeks later, a small cardboard box appeared on my doorstep. No label, no return address. I put on gloves, turned on the camera, carefully opened the lid. Inside, Nora's old baby monitor and a folded note, handwritten in the same stiff violet ink used in all the HOA violation notices I used to receive. It read, "You may keep the child now. She has been marked. And beneath that, in faint pencil, "You haven't found the others yet." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I handed the box to my sister. This time, we didn't burn it. We sealed it, logged it as federal evidence, and sent it straight to the Department of Justice. We had dismantled a network, but networks aren't buildings. They're not paper. They're ideas. Mobile, adaptive. Ghosts that travel through contracts, bylaws, and forged signatures. That night, a different black SUV rolled slowly down our street. No license plate, no headlights. It didn't stop, but it saw me, and I know it knew that I was still awake, still watching, still ready. Because the most terrifying truth isn't that the HOA once took my daughter. It's that they never believed they were wrong. And a system like that doesn't die when exposed. It hides, restructures, and waits to return. Next time, it'll have a different name, a new logo, a fresh slogan. But the goal will remain: control, erasure, and calling it stability. And next time, they won't just face one mother. They'll face a community that's done being afraid. The first and most urgent message: silence is never a safe option. When injustice occurs, if we turn away, dismiss it, or think it'll probably be fine, we become part of the reason it continues. The mother in this story didn't wait for permission. She didn't rely on the system. She acted, terrified, alone. But she moved forward, and in doing so, she opened the door for an entire community to rise. The second message: truth has power, but only when someone is brave enough to protect it. In this story, the evidence, videos, letters, recordings, meant nothing by themselves. They only became weapons when someone dared to speak them out loud, to face the consequences, to demand accountability. In real life, whether at work, in your neighborhood, or online, when you see something wrong, don't believe you're too small to make a difference. The third message: community doesn't begin with meetings. It begins with connections between brave people. A father who steps onto the porch, a teenager with a skateboard who hits record, a mother who refuses to run. Each of those acts, tiny, quiet, formed an unbreakable wall. In the real world, when we connect, when we listen to our neighbors, protect one another, and share what we know, we build the one thing every manipulative system fears most: an awakened community. And finally, perhaps the most profound truth: you don't need permission to do what's right. We're taught to comply, to not rock the boat, to keep the peace. But when the system itself becomes the threat, then blind obedience isn't a virtue. It's the crack where evil seeps in. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, an office worker, a student, you always have the right to ask questions, to say no, and to rise. This story isn't just for those who have been harmed. It's for all of us, those living behind invisible fences of policy, pressure, and fear. To remind us, when one person speaks out, it might save a child. But when a community speaks together, it can change the entire system. If today's story made you pause, reflect, or even feel outraged at the truth that's been hidden, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the stories that come next. Did you find yourself connecting with the mother? Or do you still have doubts about what really happened? Whether your thoughts are supportive or skeptical, leave a comment below, because every voice matters, and you are part of the conversation that's waking up an entire community.